Salon Culture, Culture Action Europe podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Culture Action Europe Elections podcast series, the 23rd and 26th of May. Culture Action Europe is discussing key cultural topics with special guests, such as freedom of artistic expression, mobility for cultural workers, and the place for culture in the digital age. My name is Sophie Dowden. I am Policy Officer at Culture Action Europe, and in this episode I will be talking to Luca Jahier, President of the European Economic and Social Committee. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
To begin with, we're in a time when common European values and European unity, it seems that they've been taken for granted. And now we're increasingly seeing challenges to them. How do you see the role of culture in enhancing a positive understanding of Europe?
In a time where not only the fundamental value of the constituency of the European Union, but also the constituency of democracy are largely questioned, and some persons are even thinking that we need less culture and more security, as has been told by some interview in Italy, or we can sacrifice freedom, democracy, and the freedom of expression for a better management of decision. We need to rediscover the sense of belonging and the sense of where we come from and where we found our way of life at the very end. It's not only about data, about growth, about a decent job that are all very important, but also about values and fundamental values. And I think that culture is an enormous reserve of good and fundamental energy to rediscover this and to reshape, to renew the European project. Only for one reason, because culture is the place where all the fundamental values of our project found a foundation, and also because culture has always been a bridging between differences and not divisive. Has also been used or misused by propaganda to devise and to consolidate tyranny and also destruction, but has been used. But per se, culture, when is capable to express as fundamental values, is unifying and maintaining the diversity and mixing diversity, building up something new.
And speaking of diversity, one of the challenges that we have seen is backlashes against cultural diversity. So how do you think the EU can actively support cultural diversity in both an online and offline context?
I think that the first question is to recognize the first of the cultural actors in any level for what they can bring to society, and the second is also for all the cultural actors also to take the conscience that they have not only to defend, preserve their space, their job, their work, their autonomy, but they have also a fundamental role to play in building up the common good of society. So is a both sides. When we speak about the European Union, it's not only some decision taken in the closed rooms of some institution that will give the necessary support, the legislative framework to protect. It's also a both side engagement. I think that the European Year of Cultural Heritage has raised in both parties conscience. Of course, is a first step. We have to do more. I am very glad that this year was established when European Union has decided to have no more any year on any subject. This year has found a big consensus in the member state, in all the institutions, and also in the preparation of the draft proposal for the multi-annual financial framework for the 7 years to come, when the proposal for the budget for culture that are not enough but are important, that are higher than in the past, were welcomed by everyone with no question and no doubt. So there is a consensus about the importance of this sector. Of course, we are only at the first step. There is an enormous work to do, but there is also the challenge of the time that we are living, and I think that if both sides take their responsibility, there could be a good chance to recognize that this diversity will enter in dialogue and will protect our way of life and will build up also solutions for the challenge we have to face.
And in line with these challenges as well, and both on and offline, we also see challenges to freedom of artistic expression increasingly and across Europe. Would you support a European regulation to ensure freedom of artistic expression?
But first of all, I think that we have to conceive and to recognize that freedom of artistic expression are part of the largest freedom of expression that are protected as a fundamental value by the Article 2 of the treaty. And so the freedom of artistic expression are not different from the freedom of political, for the freedom of religious expression, for the freedom of press, for the freedom of thinking, for the freedom of meeting, for the freedom of creating association or trade unions or confederation of employers, and to be recognized until anyone will respect the law and we respect the others and will not use army or violence to establish his role and his idea has to be recognized. So this is the fundamental fight of today. Of course, where there will be specific issue concerning artists that are concerned, this also should be protected. But I see that the challenge today is more to reaffirm that Europe is based on this fundamental freedom. And these fundamental freedom are today under question, not only because of the force of the social media that try to impose a monolinguistic and a violent way to approach and to dialogue, but also, unfortunately, in some member states that are reducing the freedom of press, that are reducing either by content but also by administrative issue, the freedom of expression, the freedom of organizing, the freedom of meetings, and that's the real challenge. In this, culture has an enormous role to play, and we have to see the specific, perhaps, problem that cultural actors could find in this more large framework that is under attack.
And looking at cultural actors a bit more precisely, another problem for cultural workers today is assuring adequate labour conditions, which is exacerbated by such things as platform work and is something that we're seeing more and more in society more broadly. What role should the EU play in facilitating better labour conditions for artists and cultural workers?
But first of all, as you are saying, that there is a need to recognize there's the change in the changing condition of work that are affecting every field of society are also affecting this sector. That perhaps the one thing that could be affected, but is also largely affected as many other sectors. And there is a need perhaps to be capable from this sector, either via the Confederation of Enterprise or the Confederation of the Organization in the sector of culture, but also the Confederation of Trade Unions that are organizing the workers, and many of them are temporary and not protected workers in this field, to raise in the large framework of the changing condition of work the necessity to revise the condition of protection, the condition of not only of welfare but also social security, to include also this sector. Perhaps it's not enough recognized, but to the historical lack of protection, there are these new changing in the world of work. So if I think that, of course, this is more challenging because there are so many rapid and fast changes and no rapid solution. And we know that in 5 years from now, 60% of the acting work will not exist anymore. That young people that start this career today will be obliged to change at least 7.5 times type of work and radically, and our society is not prepared to accompany this. So, but if we look to this, there is also another enormous opportunity, but due to the fact that we need to face these challenges and to find common solution, there is also space for this specific sector that is an important sector also because it's growing in number of enterprise, in number of workers, is one of the sector with the highest rate of growth in terms of contribution to GDP, in contribution to tourism, in contribution to reshaping the space of entire region. As my city, Torino, for example, is totally changed. It was an industrial city. Today is a city of culture, tourism linked to culture. So it's clear the contribution this sector is gaining. And when you have more visibility, you can also claim more capacity to be heard when you represent the problem, either of the enterprise, either of the stakeholders that are making the sector, and either of the workers. So I am confident that there is a space. What the European Union can do first is to analyze the existing provisions that are established at the level of the European Union, if they are capable to protect all these changing that are in line. Where there is a need to reestablish a new framework, there would be a need to establish proposal that will have also specific approach. And also I think that there should be a capacity to raise this question also in public, in the debate level, the national level, because most of the regulation have to be taken at the level of the state. But in the general framework of an attention to revise, to and to also reformulate when needed the existing framework, because the work is changing, the condition of work are changing, condition of life are changing, and we need also to adapt our security and social protection system to this changing world.
And another aspect of the work of artists and cultural workers is that they tend to move a lot in their careers, which also enhances access to culture for citizens and promotes cultural diversity. But there are still many barriers to this, particularly for those coming in from outside the EU. And do you think in that case that the EU should have an initiative to facilitate Schengen visas, for example, for artists and cultural workers?
So I think that first of all there is the protection inside the European Union of one of the fundamental freedoms, that is the freedom of movement of workers around Europe. This could be affected today, and not only because there are some temptation of restricting this freedom. Never forget that one of the main reasons of the gaining of the Brexit was exactly to stop the free movement of workers, and not from the migrants, but from the European ones. They could be Italian or Romanian or Polish, but this was one of the main arguments used in the campaign to say we want to get back the control. We do not want to have any more Italians, Polish and Romanian and others coming to London and to England to work. So we have to protect this fundamental freedom. That's sometimes for technical reason or for details cannot be guaranteed, and with all the specificity. But of course, as you know, it's not only the world of the artist. Look to the world of the liberal profession. There are also a lot of problems in the mobility of profession. A notary or a lawyer that is exercising his work in Germany cannot do his same work in France, because his title is not recognized, his role is not recognized, the systems are different. So we have still a lot to work to complete the single market for this issue, to allow people to move all around Europe. And of course, many sectors, and the cultural sector by its definition is a mobile sector. For what concerns the mobility from outside the European Union, I think that there is a space to work on this, perhaps to the issue, although from what I know, I'm not an expert in the sector, but we are very far from a concrete solution. But the fact that due to the initiative taken 2 years ago, if I remember well, by Federica Mogherini, Commissioner Navratil, and Commission about this communication of the role of culture in the external relation. And of course, when you establish that culture has a key role in external relations of the European Union, and as a stabilizer, a building, an instrument to rebuild trust and to build confidence, to bridge between people and diversity, one of the ways is also to favor exchange. And if you want to favor exchange, you have to allow people that are working in the sector to move from European to be helped to go outside and to exchange with them working in some country. It could be Syria or Libya or Mali, where there is a lot to reconstruct, and also for Libyan archaeologist or Syrian archaeologist or artist or the African cineast and actors or the Pan-African films to come to Europe and to participate, to make stage, to study, or to even to work for a short time. So if we recognize that culture is becoming a driving force in external relation, because it is a low way to establish, to enter in dialogue with others, and this low way become more effective, you have also to take in account that in this way the exchange of people is fundamental. And so I think that although the technical issue perhaps need to be worked a little more in the years to come, I hope next legislation there will be possibility, but there is now the framework to put this in contact. This should be done not only for the importance per se of allowing people to move because they are artists, but because the culture in all these different aspects has been recognized as a driving force of external relations, as a priority for Europe. And if you recognize, you have also to not only to put money and to put political initiative, but also to allow people to move.
And so looking at these various challenges that we've been talking about that are arising in our near future, talking about the rise of digital technology, increasing globalization, human soft skills are becoming more and more important. So what's your position on reinforcing a shared cross-sectoral strategy for education and culture at an EU level?
The key issue in the future will be to maintain human in command in the artificial intelligence revolution. This, of course, will need not only to reinforce all the lifelong learning accompanying the several transition and transformation in any field of work. Of course, the education became a key factor for maintaining this goal, but also we will need to establish a very clear scale of value in this issue. From one part, there is the technological innovation that are also part of this creativity, of this soft skill of human that can invent or reinvent anything, that they are good, but we have also to reconsider them in a scale of value, so in how they will affect the major presence of technology. At least today we see that the major presence of technology, social media and virtual games in the life of our adolescent is terrible, affecting the way they grow, even the violence and the incapacity to make a relation indirectly because all mediated by the network. And so we have to work a lot on this. We have to reinforce also the human capacity, the sentiment, the capacity of relation, and it will be the real challenge of tomorrow. So yes, of course, there is a need to work a lot about education skills, but there also need to enlarge the concept of working on this, because too much of the investment today is to reinforce the capacity of humans, workers or manager in the access and control of the hard technology and the ET technology. We need also to work a lot on the capacity of reinventing the way to manage relation, to manage work, to manage networking, because where we risk to lose really is in this human capacity that will be the only way to maintain the human in command of the process. That is, okay, still to be capable to understand what happens, not to be in front of a machine and say how it works in the machine, what can I have money that is in the machine because I'm not capable to understand nothing on this incredible machine. That's one way. But the other also on the capacity to govern a system where the machine and the artificial intelligence are becoming more and more important, not only as instrument but as part of the process and even of the decisional process. Take the example of course of the polls, of the algorithms that are in the formulation of the opinion on many issues. And for this, we have the counterbalance of the creation of other instruments, and it's not only the fact that to understand how algorithm works and how to work them for using at the maximum, but also how to use for the good and not only for the bad, and also how to develop other skills that are more human, more relation, because if we lose the other part, finally the technology will take the command of humans.
And so finally, given the number of initiatives that could and perhaps need to be undertaken at EU level in the domain of culture, what is your position on doubling the budget for culture at the EU level?
My personal position will be absolutely in favor. I do not think that this will be a realistic one in the framework where we are. I think that we have a positive start, and I hope we can protect in the future that at least what has been proposed, that is an increased budget, is, if compared with the past, has been supported by all for the moment. But from this support for the proposal to the concrete adoption of the multi-annual financial framework, there is still a long way to go. Unfortunately, there will be no decision on the fundamental key issue of the MFF before the European election, although negotiations are going on, and of course also all the package concerning the cultural sector, except one issue, has all been adopted not just in time, but even before the scheduled time, as many other dossiers are still under discussion. So, from my point of view, the first goal will be with the new Parliament, the new Commission, to protect what has been proposed and to be guaranteed there will be no surprise that as they are new, they reopen everything. And the second, from my point of view, is also for the most importance, is to to insist that to play a role for culture is considered as a key priority in any sectoral policy. Because it's not only to have a budget for culture, for creative industry and for many other, but to have a specific focus on culture in any field of the politics. And as I hope and I will fight for, and I call that the Sustainable Development Agenda has to become the horizontal agenda for all politics of the European Union in the future. I continue to claim for what was one proposal from one side that culture has to become the fourth pillar of the Sustainable Development Agenda, not only for make a pleasure to the creative industry or the sector of culture, but because culture can give the narrative to the three other pillars, and so also reinforce the governance system that has not to simply to make a picture, but to make a film. And we need economic growth, we need social protection, we need all the things that are dealing with environmental, climate and climate change. But for this, we need a new narrative, a new positive narrative that will give us the sentiment and also the emotion to consider this as the new future for the new social contract of the 21st century. And so we will build a film, not only a good picture when everything is stable. So good to fight for an increased budget for culture. I will support this, but I'm more interested in the construction of the process where culture could and have to play a driving force for the content and for the positive energy they can deliver in the process.
Luca Jahier, thank you very much for joining us. To take part in the Culture Action Europe election campaign and call for the future we want to see for culture and for Europe, just follow the link in the episode notes of this podcast. You can also join in the discussion in Culture Action Europe's live online dialogue, welcoming MEPs and citizens to discuss a variety of themes such as those we have discussed today. This dialogue takes place on the 25th of April at jamart.eu. You can find more information in the episode notes of this podcast. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to check out other episodes in this series and share it with your friends and colleagues.